Hi, my name is Dr. Manus. In this video, I will be providing a brief introduction to the concept of personality. Let's get started. The main objective of this video is to show you how an individual's personality influences their behavior as a consumer. So, what is personality? We can think of personality like a combination of puzzle pieces. In the slide background, there's a head from the neck up combined of 4 puzzle pieces. Well, that's a relatively simplified version of what we might consider personality. But if you think of a larger puzzle that contains many pieces, that's what we can think of personality. It's a combination of puzzle pieces where each puzzle piece resembles a characteristic or quality that together form an individual's distinctive character. For example, you may know someone who is kind and outgoing. You may also know someone that is kind and shy. So these individuals, while you could come up with maybe several other characteristics to describe them, all of these descriptors make up who that person is. Others have defined personality as a person's unique psychological makeup and how it consistently influences the way a person responds to their environment. Typically, whenever we think about personality, our personalities undergo dramatic changes as we grow up. If you think back to how you developed as a child and through your teenage years up to now, whatever stage of life you're in, you may be able to recall distinctive changes in your personality, how you developed, and oftentimes, whenever you're a parent, you can definitely see those changes in your children's personality as they grow up. It's definitely apparent of the characteristics and qualities that develop as we age. And our personality by about age 30 will remain relatively stable until the end of our life. So until about age 30, we're still developing our personalities, and we still have room to maybe have some changes, to grow, to improve. So our personalities will continue to develop as we age until about 30 years old, and then they'll remain relatively stable. Now that we've defined personality, let's discuss some of the theories of personality. While there are several theories of personality, one of the most common theories is the Freudian theory of personality. The Freudian theory of personality states that one's adult personality stems from a fundamental conflict between a person's desire to gratify his or her physical needs and the necessity to function as a responsible member of society. These three terms, what's the distinction is the id, ego, and superego. The id is what's called immediate gratification. It operates according to the pleasure principle. So think when you were a baby or a very, very young child, you really only operated according to the id, because if you were hungry, you cried, and your parents would hopefully feed you. Whenever you soiled your diaper, you cried because you needed a diaper change. And you couldn't fend for yourself, so you wanted immediate gratification to, oh, hey, I need someone to come help me so I can get my diaper changed, or I can get food, or maybe you needed some love from mom or dad. So we have our id, which operates according to that pleasure principle. Then we have the superego, which is essentially a person's conscience. And in the background, it's kind of hard to see in the slide, but you have the id and the superego is kind of like two opposing forces, and then you have the ego that is the system that tries to balance those opposing forces of the id and the superego. So throughout your childhood, you most likely learn how to control your urges and behavior that made you want to have immediate gratification. You learn how to control that so that you would behave in ways that are socially appropriate. And oftentimes, what we experience as we grow older and become adults is that the ego helps us fall into what's called the reality principle. And that is that we as individuals will gratify the id, the pleasure principle, the need for immediate gratification in ways that the outside world will find acceptable. So if you've ever been on a diet or tried to maintain a diet plan, oftentimes it can be difficult. And with that, you may have your id speaking to you saying, "Oh, well, I want that piece of chocolate cake," or "I want that juicy steak," or something that's outside of your diet plan. Well, your ego is trying to help rein that id in, that idea that, "Oh, I want that thing that's outside my diet plan," to finding something that is still tasty but fits into that diet plan. So it's reining that in, but finding a compromise that can satisfy your cravings while still maintaining and fitting into the diet plan that you've set out for yourself. We also have Neo-Freudian theories of personality. One developed by Karen Horney describes people as compliant, detached, or aggressive. A compliant personality tends to have a high need for affection and approval. A detached personality, one moving away from others, tends to be described as self-sufficient and a perfectionist. And finally, an aggressive personality, or one that moves against others, tends to have a high need for power, prestige, admiration, and achievement. Carl Jung also developed some theories on personality. One being the notion of the collective unconscious, described as a storehouse of memories of past generations that shape who we are today. An example would be the mother-child relationship. Nobody tells us what a mother is, but we react as babies in a certain way to a mothering figure, regardless where we were born in the world or what our culture, religion, or race is. Additionally, part of the collective unconscious is what's called archetypes, described as universally recognized ideas and behavior patterns. There are 12 Jungian archetypes that Carl Jung developed. The 12 Jungian archetypes are displayed here on this slide. One is the ruler, other is creator, sage, innocent, explorer, outlaw, hero, wizard, jester, everyman, lover, and caregiver. While I'm not going to go into each of these, I'll just use an example because these archetypes can be found throughout history. You may even know some of these from popular movies that are referenced in pop culture. You could also think of some of these being displayed in books, TV shows, that these archetypes are present based on what these archetypes represent. For example, if we use the Star Wars movies as a way to examine some of these archetypes, we might look at the sage archetype as being Yoda. We might consider the hero in the Star Wars series as Luke Skywalker. And we might think of the outlaw as Han Solo, the outlaw archetype. There's other archetypes throughout history, right, and throughout our life that we may be able to pinpoint and think of people who might represent some of these archetypes. If we think of maybe some movies that we watched as children, one that I remember is Aladdin and the magician archetype with the genie. I also remember some other Disney movies that had some of these archetypes in full display. And many movies today have these different archetypes that may be present. Not all of them necessarily in every movie, but they have different components. Some combination of some of these archetypes present in their storyline, their movie, and we could go back and look at different stories throughout history, and they most likely have some of these archetypes present in them. Another theory of personality is trait theory. Trait theory focuses on the quantitative measurement of personality traits through a survey or questionnaire. Personality traits are the identifiable characteristics that define a person, that are relatively stable over time and consistent across situations. They also differ across individuals. For instance, we might say that someone is more introverted, whereas someone else might be considered more extroverted. While we're going to discuss general personality traits, first we're going to discuss some traits that are specific to consumer behavior. One is innovativeness. This is the degree to which a person likes to try new things. And we can measure that. There's different survey questionnaires that have been developed to measure and understand an individual's level of innovativeness. We might also be able to measure materialism. And this is the amount of emphasis a person places on acquiring and owning products. From a consumer behavior standpoint, that should be self-explanatory because we want to understand what consumers are doing in the marketplace. Do they place more emphasis on acquiring, owning products, or less emphasis on acquiring and owning products? We can also measure self-consciousness. This is the degree to which a person deliberately monitors and controls the image of the self that he or she projects to others. And this can help consumer behaviors really understand what consumers are trying to project to others in the outside world and how they go about doing that through their purchase behavior. We also have what's called the need for cognition. And this is the degree to which a person likes to think about things and by extension expends the necessary effort to process brand information. We also have frugality, and this is the tendency to deny short-term purchases and to make do with what they already own. So we could try to understand whether a consumer is more or less frugal to understand what type of purchases they're going to be willing to make and what they actually do make and how often they make larger purchases. However, what we have found is while we may want to use these different measures to understand these different potential traits, it's really hard to predict product choices from these different traits that I've just described. It's hard to predict consumer behavior based on personality alone, and that's because there are several explanations for why consumers behave the way they do. So while I describe some consumer behavior specific measures of different components of personality, different traits, the most widely recognized approach to measuring general personality traits is the Big Five Personality Index. And the Big Five Personality Index, as you might guess, is composed of 5 general personality traits. One being openness to experience. This is the degree to which a person is open to new ways of doing things. So someone could be more open to experiences where someone else might be less open to experiences. We also have the component of conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And each of these 5 components, we might score a higher score or a lower score. And the scores of the 5 different personality traits, the Big Five, we're able to get a score that makes up our unique individual personalities based on where we fall on each of these 5 general traits. Another measure to understand general personality traits is the Myers-Briggs assessment. You may be familiar with Myers-Briggs. You may have seen some of these letter combinations before, whether online. Your friends may have taken a psychology class and they were asked to take the Myers-Briggs assessment. I don't ask you to do that for this class, but I encourage you to do so because it may help you understand yourself better. You're measured on 4 general dimensions, one being whether you're more extroverted or introverted, the other whether you are more sensing or intuition, the other where you're more thinking or feeling, and the last dimension whether you're more judging or perceiving. And the Myers-Briggs, it's about 100 questions. It may take you a little bit longer than the Big 5 personality index, but it does offer some insight into your own personality, and you might get some benefit out of it. That concludes the video on an introduction to personality. If you'd like to learn more about personality or learn more about other consumer behavior topics, please feel free to watch my other videos. If you have questions, feel free to email me at kmanus@nmsu.edu. Bye-bye.